All right. We're at it again. Another night. Vivi's upstairs. She may or may not join us. We got one of the kittens joining us here. He is up on the pool table where he's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to be. You are not supposed to be. Figured I'd introduce you guys to Henry. He was a kitten. He's not a kitten anymore, right, Henry? So he's you can't really see it, but he's got beautiful like rose colors. He's a Siberian. So anyway, as we build an audience, just kind of showing you the family, and he decided to join us tonight, right? Right, Henry? All right, go play. All right, so tonight I figured I would just talk a little bit about a few things. I wanted to go back in time like I did the first couple of days, kind of telling you some parts of the journey. And there was some things that happened early on when I became a financial advisor, which was in 2003. So let me just kind of sum up to where that started. I think I left that out of the story, and I often don't tell the story just because there's just so much to talk about, and I just leave a lot of the details out. But I figured, hey, what the hell? Let's get it out tonight. But I know a bunch of you were on WTF this morning. It was pretty freaking fun. And then we did March Money Madness. That was at 1:00. And then we did Ask Me Anything happy hour. And I know a bunch of you took advantage of that MSTV bundle that we put together. The March Money Madness bundle is what we're calling it. $197 for all that stuff. That's pretty much a steal. I'll put that post in here as we get rolling. But so I was doing, when I try to explain to people the timelines of the journey, one of the hard things, and I'm sure a lot of you struggle with this too, but one of the hard things to accomplish is to kind of get people to understand that I was never just doing one thing. It wasn't like, maybe when I was younger and in the early days of starting my company, I was doing just one thing, but I always had a side job or something. So when I was running my shops, and it was, what year would this have been? 2000. Okay. So in 2000, a lot of things were happening in my life. Number one, I was trying to open a skate park, an indoor skate park that was called Kingpin Skate Park. And we ended up opening that up. I think we opened it in 2000 or 2001. It only made it a couple of years, but we did succeed at that. Any of you that were from the Lockport area, it was on Market Street in Lockport. It was 11,000 square feet, just epic. We had all the biggest teams, like skate teams, like you all probably know of Rob Deerdick, right? So Rob Deerdick was just a pro skater back then. And Tony Hawk, he was the owner of Birdhouse. And there was like Andrew Reynolds, and there was all sorts of guys Kalis. So Deerdick, Kalis, Josh Kalis, and I'm trying to think of who the other guy was. They were like Alien Workshop and Habitat skaters. Josh Kalis, Rob Deerdick, Kerry Getz. And those were like all Habitat and Alien Workshop skaters. They were like some of the biggest, they were some of the biggest skaters of the time. And we used to get them to come out to the skate park. But anyway, so I'm trying to explain, like I had Fat Man board shops going, okay? And I was a pro snowboarder, and I was running Kingpin Skate Park. So I literally worked I'd probably get to work around 9:45. I never really got there early, not like today, but I'd get there 9:45. The shop would open at 10, and I would work from 10 a.m. and I would close the skate park down at 9 p.m. So I'd work 10 a.m. to 4 or 5 at the shop. And then I'd hightail it over to the skate park and work till 9 o'clock. And some of that was skating, because obviously if it was slow or there was a bunch of people there, I'd go out and skate with the kids. And that was my life. That's what we did. And weekends were at the skate park and at the shop. So the thing I'm trying to explain is, as an entrepreneur, especially in my early entrepreneur days, I worked 7 days a week. But you see, it wasn't work. It was just chasing my dream. I was literally chasing my dream. Now, in the winter time, I had it set up where I overscheduled at the shop because I couldn't be there. I always tried to be around for Christmas because that was the big money making. But after that, I was on the road. I was traveling all the time. Weekends, for sure, I was competing. But I was out there spreading the good word of the shop, spreading the word of the skate park. And then when I'd come back from my trips, listen, I was just right back into it. So it was a 7-day-a-week thing. I didn't have steady girlfriends back then, didn't have a wife, no kids. So, par for the course, right? Here's the thing. I'm going to get to the point, and because I don't want to go for a super long time. What's up, Dex? You haven't missed an episode yet. You have not. And Lisa's here with us. Thanks, Lisa, for joining us. 4th episode of the day. You You guys are troopers just like me. You just never stop. So I had gotten this idea to open a new shop. So here's some things nobody ever knows. When Fat Man Board Shops opened, it was opened with Steven Seminaro. Okay, he was the guy that ran the shop. I wasn't even part of Fat Man on its initial opening. I was part of it. I was part of everything. I went to the trade shows, did the buying. I was part of the design, part of everything. I just didn't have money, so he owned it. And he ran it for about a year and a half. I worked there. I was still going to trade shows. I was definitely a part of Fat Man. But Fat Man to me back then was when I had my clothing line, Fat Clothing Company. So I was selling my clothing at the shop while working at the shop and getting paid. But shortly thereafter, Stephen got another idea he wanted to open this business out in California in La Jolla, and he wanted to sell the shop. And I remember thinking, this is exactly what I've always wanted to do. And we started getting into the numbers. I remember meeting at his house many, many nights, going through the numbers, and I already knew how the shop operated because I was there all the time. And, but remember now I'm not in the 2000s now. Just want you to all preface that I'm back in 1994, 95. And long story short, that's when Mom put the house on the line. I did the business plans. It took me about 8 months, start to finish, to do the business plans, to go through all the failures of not getting the loans and getting turned down and having everybody in my family say no, to the point where M&T Bank offered me that SBA-backed loan with collateral. Mom put her house up. Anyway, now I had the shop. So now you understand that part. I never tell that story. So then I'm the sole owner of Fat Man Board Shops. Literally one of the greatest days ever. So great that me and my friend threw a banger party at my house, big kegger. I think we had like 10 kegs. And the neighbors called the cops. We had like 120 people there. My mom was freaking out. But I was like, Mom, it's okay. We got all their keys. We took everybody's keys and we put them in the freezer. I don't know why the freezer. Like, it was a stupid thing. But we put them in the freezer, I think, so that people couldn't take their keys and drive drunk. So I was trying to be responsible. Cops came, busted us, threatened to arrest us. It was a wild night. But anyway, that's how exciting that period of time was. Not the party, but that was my celebration. That was back when I used to celebrate my wins. And boy, did I celebrate that one. So the store was going good. And after I opened the shop, I opened a kiosk in the Walden Galleria at the mall. That was it was okay, but it was cool. Now I had 2 locations, had more employees, and I kept doing that. And then what ended up happening is, Steve ended up wanting to come back into the business. Like, the thing in California wasn't working. So we started talking. We always had a great relationship. I'd bought him out. And then we got this idea of, okay, let's open another company. It was Fat Man 2 Inc. was the name of that company. And we opened another company, and that company was set up to open a boutique shop out in Orchard Park, New York, which is kind of like the town where the Buffalo Bills are. Okay, that's the Buffalo Bills Stadium. It's kind of a great little town, affluent area, and not far from Kissing Bridge, the resort. So it was going to be a great boutique and skate shop, and it was in a good demographic. So we put a lot of energy and effort into building that shop out, and we leveraged. Okay, so he put money in and I put money in, but the money I put in was loans. Okay, so I was leveraging at this point, and a lot of the equipment that we put into the shop was financed. A lot of the merchandise was all on net 30, which is kind of like terms. So you can see, like, we did it with our own money, but we did it with not a lot of money, considering we opened a brand new shop that we had to renovate and everything else. Like, literally, we had a vanilla box. If you don't know what a vanilla box is in real estate, it's literally a box that all the walls are painted white. So that's all we started with. So we needed to put all the lighting in. We needed to do all graphics on the walls, carpeting, all the fixtures and equipment. We were going around to all the used furniture places. We bought cigar, like these. I think they're probably in Fat Man still. This is how epic they were. This is crazy. Actually, they are. I was just in Fat Man the other day getting some boots, snowboard boots. But these were like cigar showcases. And we found them used, and we ended up buying them all. And they were the showcase that we used down there. But nonetheless, like, we got all these accounts, we did all the buying, and we went in depth doing this. First year was a gangbuster. It was awesome. Like, I was working out there. So now let's just preface what I'm doing. So now I've got this Orchard Park store that I'm doing with my partner, Steve. My partner, Steve, is running another store. Okay. The Sheridan Drive location. I'm running the Lockport store, and this is going to get blurry a little bit because there was 3 stores going on. And I was jumping from Lockport and I had I can't remember who was running. Maybe it was Randy, maybe it was Nate. I had a manager doing the Lockport mostly. I was spending a lot of time in Orchard Park. So I would commute from Lockport, New York out to Orchard Park every day, and I would run that shop. Then from there, I'd come home and I'd go to the skate park. Usually I wouldn't even go home. I'd pack a lunch and I would just basically go right to the skate park. And then I would skate and close it down at 9. Now, here's where it all kind of gets a bit strange and jumbled. And this is where the bad stuff rolls in. Because really up to this point, it was kind of just like, it was almost living a dream. It was like a fairy tale land. Hey, what's up, Rebecca? So, thanks for joining us. Let's see. Let me pause real quick about the fairy tale. I just want to come over here. I was getting so caught up in the story, trying to remember the whole thing and trying to piece it together, making sure I got everybody over here on Instagram. We got a bunch of people on Instagram. Got about 30 people here. We usually get about 30 to 60 people as we get rolling. So nonetheless, I'm living the dream. Now, if you all remember, there was an event, 9/11. Planes hit the towers, then a recession. So I was out in California, and I was out there at a buying, they call them trade shows. I was buying next season's stuff, and I landed the next day. I'm driving to my Orchard Park store. I remember it was a beautiful sunny day out here in Buffalo. And on the radio, back then we didn't have social media. We didn't have flip phones. We didn't have phones with pictures or any way to get the news. We had the radio, like 97 Rock, 103.3 and 102.1. Like it was just the radio. And the radio, I remember I'm driving past the Galleria Mall, which I hated that place at this point because they had screwed me over on a lease for a store that we had there. But nonetheless, it's not important. What's up, Dennis? And I remember on the radio, everything got interrupted. All the songs got interrupted, and there was an attack. And a plane had hit the towers. And at first, now remember, I had just got off a plane the day before from California. So this kind of was like, holy crap, a plane just hit the tower. I thought it was just a little plane, but it wasn't. And then another plane. That was 9/11. You all know that. We try, just to not celebrate, but just kind of mourn those who we lost and just remember what happened on that day. But after that was the first recession I ever went through. And I remember a lot of things happened. So that brand new store that was highly leveraged, sales dropped tremendously, like 30%. I didn't know how we were going to keep it alive. And not only did sales drop, for some reason, Orchard Park decided to rip up the entire street. Literally took it right down. The road was closed most of the time. People couldn't even get to our shop. We complained. We wrote letters. We were like, okay, is it the recession or is it the road? It was a combination of the both. But nonetheless, it got to a point where we couldn't afford rent. I think rent was like $2,000 a month. We couldn't afford it. Just couldn't, plain and simple. So me and Steven got this crazy idea. And this is not the Steven that you guys all know. This is a different Steve. And we got this crazy idea that what we're going to do is we're going to rent U-Hauls, 2 of them. We're going to back them up during the day. And we were going to literally unload the entire store into these trucks because the landlord had threatened us that if we tried jumping out on the lease, he'd lock all of our stuff up and keep it. So we're like, the hell you will. I was a little rebel back then. And we did. We literally unloaded that entire store in 2 days. The entire staff was there. We loaded it all in and we took everything to a new location. We opened a new shop, brand new shop. And it was in the Boulevard Mall. And that's when that third store came. Or sorry, no, the third store was there, but we moved. And just so you all know, this is Scouty. So say hi, Scouty. This is he joins us. He's just purring up a storm over here. So this is Mr. Scout. Hey, buddy. He likes going live. He used to be on TV all the time with us. He used to come to the shop, and you're in a bunch of videos with Sean, aren't you? So we did that. We moved it all to this new shop, and we opened that new shop. But nonetheless, that was a failure. We got sued by the landlord. He tried taking everything, but we were pretty smart. Steve was pretty smart and had a good attorney. And that attorney, when he reviewed the lease and we made changes to the lease, we had an out. So we never got stuck with that lease, thank God. But at that point, during this whole slowdown, this whole collapse, I'm struggling. I'm not knowing how I'm going to pay my bills, not knowing how I'm going to pay my car payment. I literally started thinking, I need to get a job. I need to Scouty. I need to do something else because this just wasn't cutting it, wasn't paying the bills. I was frustrated. I was depressed. A lot of things were happening. So I remember I just put my resume out I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put a resume out there. We'll see what happens. And now this is maybe where some of you know the story. And when I put the resume out, that's when I got into Wall Street. So let's get on to the last part of this. And also I want to preface, if any of you are seeing a little scrolling things at the bottom, book a call with our team. That's the Money Mentor team that they're referring to. So if you wanted to talk to any of us, you want to talk about your stuff that you've got going on, just see if infinite banking is the right thing for you. And then, hey, and guess who showed up? Vivi just showed up. But let's move into the next part. So as an advisor, so I did, when I put my resume out, I ended up getting interviews in Wall Street, literally as a financial advisor. Hi, Viv. As a financial advisor, those are the only people that called me back. I mean, we're in a recession, and that was the only people that called me back. This would have been probably 2022 when this was all happening. And this is Viv, for those of you that don't know. She is 4.5 years old. Don't rip my hat, Vivi. And she comes down here and beats the crap out of me on these. The last couple days, she's been giving her whole Paw Patrol, showing all of her Paw Patrol cars and showing you. And then yesterday was really cute. Didn't you draw a bunch of pictures for everybody? That was awesome. That was awesome. Viv, go grab the skateboard. Let's show them that because you love this skateboard. She loves BYOB. What's going on, Albert? How are you? David, how are you? Yeah, glad to catch you alive. This is something we just made. These are kind of cool. We do these limited edition skate decks. It's never going to get out of me. So we made these. Be your own banker. BYOB skateboards.
BYOB?
BYOB. What does that mean, Viv?
BYOB.
But when I was a financial advisor at this time,
BYOB.
it was right after the Great Recession, the dot-com crash happened. So it was definitely tough. I remember the new org, which is all the new agents that started at the same time I did. We would get trainings every single week from the training manager, whose name was Walt. And I remember we started with like 20 some of us in the new org. And then after the first year, there was like 10 of us left. And then into the third year, there was 2 of us, me and Vinay. That was it. So we went from over 20 down to 2 in 3 years. That's how hard it is to make it. And not only how hard it is to make it, how hard it is to make it as a financial advisor, during a recession. You're killing my back. No wonder my back hurts every single day. It's not the snowboarding. It's you jumping on my back. But here's the thing. So I remember I worked really hard when I got in there. I worked really hard when I got in there. I worked longer than everybody else. I was so used to working 7 days a week and work day in, sun up to sundown, that like the way that these financial advisors, like the top guys in the office, they'd get there at 8:30 and they were gone by 4:30 in the afternoon. And they usually left for lunch. I'm like, shit, who does this? Is this really how people work? I knew nothing other than entrepreneurship, folks. I was an entrepreneur from 16 on, working 7 days a week and long days. It was just the norm, but I loved every minute of it. So now I'm witnessing something I wasn't used to, which I'm witnessing per people that are working just like basically your quintessential 9 to 5. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm not going home. I don't have anything to do at home. Like I just lived with a bunch of my friends, and most of them, worked late too. So nobody would even been at the house. It would have been lonely. Nobody's skating the mini ramp up in the second floor of the house. I didn't get home till 8 o'clock at night most nights. So what I did is when everybody else went home, I just stayed at the office and pounded the phones because I knew a couple things. I knew that people would answer the phone during lunch because they weren't, if they were off for lunch, they would answer the phone. And then I also knew that they'd answer the phone, and I knew that I could go see people after 5 p.m. So what did I do after 5? Like I spent most of the day in the office. Sometimes I'd do a lunch meeting, but most of the time I was just doing office work, booking calls, setting up, doing trainings, whatever else during the day. And then in the evening, that's when I went out on the appointments. And you know what? I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think this is weird. I didn't think this is hard. I'm just like, this is cool as hell. I get to go see people in the evening, talk to them. And then what I'd often do when I didn't have late appointments or when I schedule it, because I always ran a schedule, I just would go to the shop and I would work till 9 o'clock and close the shop. I did that all the time. A lot of times when I had like a slow day, or I probably had schedules like Fridays or whatever, and then weekends, I would work at the shop because I still had the shops going at this time. And Kingpin, I may have closed down by this point, which I think I did because I wasn't doing Kingpin, but I was definitely still snowboarding professionally. So I would go out and I would see people, and I got this referral from, somebody that I knew in my hometown. She referred me to her dad.
Daddy.
Yeah, Biff. What? Oh, show everybody. You got a cut. Who scratched you?
Scouty.
Scouty, the orange guy? You got a Band-Aid on? All right. Can you go pet Scouty? Because he's being annoying. This cat, like in the spring, we don't let any of our cats out, but he gets like this hair up his ass, and he wants to like be super nice and purr and rub against you. And it's all because he wants to go outside. It's all just a ploy. Like he just, until he gets what he wants, he just does this really nice thing. But we're on to him. You're killing me. Ow. That's going to hurt you. So please be careful. So anyway, I met this guy. His name was Bob. Okay. And at first he didn't want to meet with me, but he did because his daughter called him and said, can you please just meet with Chris? Like, he's a financial advisor, and I think you could use some help. Now, Bob, let me give you a little insight on Bob. Bob was an engineer, relatively successful engineer, had worked at the same company for a very long period of time, had a pretty high position. Back then, I mean, I don't know, this is early 2000s. Bob probably made 90 grand, but Bob was a saver. Bob saved a lot. Can I finish my story, Viv? You're showing off the board. Scout, you're annoying me. Stop. You showing the board off? Sit down. All right. Anyway, you guys can hear me, so you don't need to see me. She's showing off the skateboard. So anyway, I met with Bob, and Bob was very clear about what Bob wanted. And Bob was very clear to tell me that Bob managed his own investments. Because obviously I was there, I wanted to talk investments. What we initially did is we set up a life insurance policy. That's what Bob wanted. So what I did a life insurance policy. If I'm not mistaken, it was like $150,000 or $200,000 death benefit. Back then, I knew nothing about IBC. I knew nothing about designing and engineering policies. I just sold life insurance. Okay. But I was really trying to get Bob's investment business because he had quite a bit, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. And I really wanted to manage that, but I had to take care of what Bob wanted first. And Bob wanted life insurance to protect his wife. And that's what we took care of. But I built a really strong relationship with Bob. I always went to his house, and back then we only met with people at their houses or in the office. There was no Zoom. There was no meetings over the phone. Everything back then was face to face. Every single thing was face to face. So long story short, got him his life insurance, kept talking to him about his investments. The answer was always no, Chris, I've already told you. I manage my own investments. I do well. I know what I'm doing. But here's how it happened. I'm not a quitter. I'm pretty persistent. I knew what Bob was invested in because he was nice enough to show me his statements. And what I would do is every day or every week, I would go online and I would look at Bob's investments. And I would just see how they're trending, what they're doing. Well, this would have been, I don't remember the year this would have been, 2005 or 6, I would guess. Something had happened to some of the investments that Bob had, and they were losing money. And I had been working with our consultants at one of the mutual fund families called Mainstay. And there was this new fund that was crushing it. The times were perfect for it. So I read the prospectus. I studied the fund. I knew exactly what it was invested in. I knew exactly, I knew everything about this fund. It was called a high yield bond fund. Now, the thing you got to understand is back then, high yield bonds weren't as common and prevalent as they are today. They existed. Most of the fund families had high yield bonds. Did you just hurt him? Say you're sorry.
Yeah.
Get down. Say you're sorry. You don't hurt cats. Say you're sorry. You got to teach them. They just don't know that they can't hurt cats. I mean, she probably didn't do much, but anyway, so I knew all about this fund, and I got a chance to meet with Bob. I'm like, hey, Bob, I'm in the area. Can I just pop in? I got this thing, that I saw. I don't know if you've been looking at your portfolio, but that one fund that you're invested in has been really going down. It's been tanking. And he says, yeah, I've been looking at it. I've been watching it. Probably going to have to replace that one and just looking at my options. And I said, well, hey, can I just show you something? I've been doing a ton of research, and I just met with our consultants about this. I think you might really like this one. So I sat him down, and I had rehearsed this over and over. And I laid this fund out, this high yield Mainstay high yield bond fund. And I explained everything about it. I went through the prospectus. I knew what I was talking about. I knew the maturities on the bonds. I knew what it was investing in. But the thing it had like I think it was like a 7% yield. And Bob was a yield guy. He loved bonds because he was retired at this point. He's an engineer for all those years. Now he's retired. So he's just trying to preserve principles. So he loved bonds. but he had some equity exposure. And at that time, equity exposure was really what was getting kind of, rough. He was worried about it. So when I showed him this, he thanked me. It was a 15 or 20-minute meeting, but it was a very good meeting. Like, we both got to exchange exactly what we wanted. And he said, all right, well, I'll review it. And I just thought, damn, never going to get this guy's money. You start thinking, all right, this is just, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's never going to work. The next day, Bob calls me back. Hey, Chris, I did some research on that fund. I really like it. And, I really appreciate you doing all that work and keeping an eye on the funds I have, because, as much as I watched this, I really wasn't keeping a close eye on it. So I wouldn't have caught that one that I had was slipping. So can we get together? I'd like to move this account over to you and give you a chance. Now, it was definitely not a big account. He moved over one of his investment accounts. I can't remember. It was maybe $100,000, a small pie compared to the big ones. And he gave me a chance. But he says, hey, listen, I want you to, and he told me specifically, he told me everything. I want you to invest this much in the high yield. I want you to put the rest in these bonds. I want you to put this in cash. Like, I wasn't being the advisor. I was being advised by Bob because he had wisdom. And I did that. And then we kept managing it. And I kept getting him to change his positions. I kept doing the same thing I did before. I was watching the portfolio. Now I could see it on my portal, my platform, and I was watching it. And Bob was like my biggest client at that point, and I really liked him. We built a relationship. I had other clients. I probably had 40, 50 clients at that point. Bob was definitely the one I was giving the most attention to at this point, because a lot of the clients I had were life insurance, maybe retirement accounts, young, $50 a month. I did a lot of, you ever see the movie The Pursuit of Happiness? You know how I built my entire financial advisory career? It wasn't by getting big chunks of money, because, hey, listen, when you're a young kid, new in the business, green, and you basically just start where you start. I started just like Pursuit of Happiness. Hey, can you put $50 a month into a Roth? $25 a month into this? Sell you this term policy for $30 a month. Wow, you're going to do this $10,000 whole life policy. That's going to be $60 a month. Everything I did were these small little policies or these really small little investment accounts with my friends. Because all my friends wanted to start investing at this point. They were in their 20s, just like I was, or maybe a little younger. And I had lots of friends through the shop. So I literally just went through everybody I knew at the shop, and I got them to open up an IRA, a Roth IRA, or just a brokerage account. So I had lots of little accounts, and they built, folks. All those accounts build. And when you got them all happen at the same time, they just build and build and build and build. But Bob had the big chunk. So Bob kept, giving me more opportunities and letting me make more decisions. And over time, years, we built this really strong relationship. Eventually, I was managing all of Bob's money. Eventually, I had literally did his entire legacy plan. Bob was getting older, and he was very concerned about making sure that his wife never had to work, never had to worry, never had to move out of the house, never had to worry about money again. So we spent a lot of time, and I made some mistakes, and he always called me out on my mistakes. Oh my gosh. When I put him in something that didn't work, man, oh man, was he on it. He was a smart guy. He was a very smart guy. He was an engineer. So I'm going to wrap this story up because I don't want to be down here all night. And Vivi kind of made her appearance and left, and Scouty's just getting annoying. And I know it's late. And all of you, some of you are on your fourth visit with me today. So Bob was getting older, a lot older. He was slowing down. When I came to visit Bob, he looked frail. Never really left his, most, I don't know, any grandpas, right, that they always have their favorite chair. His was a recliner. And, he was always in that chair, but it usually was never reclined when I got there. Now, every time I got there, it was reclined. And things just started diminishing. I was talking a lot to Betty, and, I'd go over there, and sometimes I would just share cookies and milk with Betty, because Bob was sleeping. But I had that kind of a relationship with the client. It was absolutely wonderful. And not only that, they didn't live far from my house. I literally lived down the road, lived at this 24 Cherry Street in Lockport. And they literally lived, you go to the top of my street, hang a left, and then hang a right. It was right there. So it was easy for me to go see him. So that day came, and I got a call from his daughter, the daughter that referred me into him, and Bob had passed away. Kind of saw it coming, kind of knew it was coming, but it still hit me hard. Hit me really hard. I had a super strong relationship with Bob. I knew the day was coming, but clearly didn't get to say goodbye to him, because every time I was there, we were positive. Like, he's going to be around. I'm going to see him again. We're going to be talking investments. We're going to be having milk and cookies or whatever. I never got to say bye to Bob. Bob passed in his sleep peacefully. But here's the moral of the story. All that time and energy I spent on all those investments, which I thought was so important. I remember I completed all the paperwork for the death claim for the life insurance. And back then, every life insurance claim, I worked for a company called New York Life. The brokerage was called Nine Life Securities, and their RIA was called Eagle Strategies. So that was all the companies. New York Life had a policy that if you were an agent and you always delivered the death benefit. That was customary. I delivered a couple death benefits, but never one to somebody that I knew like Bob. So I remember I got that check in the mail, because they always mailed it to me. Set the meeting up to go out to Betty. Betty didn't know about this. I want to be clear. Betty knew Bob had taken care of things, but Bob was the money guy. He was the breadwinner. He controlled the finances. He controlled the money. Betty didn't know about any of this. She probably knew there was life insurance, but had no idea how much it was. She was just, that's the kind of woman she was. She was just a sweet lady, and I kept a relationship with her for many years until she passed. But the thing I'm trying to get at is, when I gave her that check, it wasn't just a check either, okay? There was the life insurance, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But we'd also set up annuities that when he died, annuitized, and provided an income stream, a calculated, guaranteed income stream for the rest of Betty's life. So Betty didn't just have the life insurance check, which I'm going to explain in a moment. Betty had a paycheck every single month that me and Bob had put together in that legacy plan. Betty never, ever had to worry about money again in her life, because every month a check rolled through the door. It never changed. It never went down. It didn't get phased by the Great Recession. It didn't get phased by anything. It just showed up every month, like clockwork, until the day she died. But when I opened that check and I slid it over to her, and she looked at the dollar amount, she just broke out in tears. She gave me the biggest hug, not because she was excited she was getting money, but because she knew she was going to be okay. She didn't understand all the stuff that Bob and I had set up for her. She didn't understand all the investment stuff. She didn't know what the hell a high yield bond was. She didn't know what the hell any of that was. She probably couldn't even say what an IRA was. But what she understood at that point is that Bob had made sure she would be okay. And that's all that mattered. That was all that mattered. See, the one thing, folks, is I talk a lot about making money, all this stuff, the truth about money, the infinite banking concepts, all these things that we talk about, private lending. But at the end of the day, the one and only thing that will matter when it all comes down to it is that someone cared enough to take care of their family. I've delivered more death claims than I can count. Literally, it would take me a long time to count all the death benefits that I have delivered to the widows, to the children, to the families, to make sure that they're going to be able to continue their life, to make sure that they're going to be able to pay the bills when the breadwinner is no longer there, when the spouse is no longer there. I realized that day when I was there with Betty, when Bob was gone, I realized what I did for a living. I realized the importance of what I did. Although it was all important, the investment management, all the stuff that I could do, investments, long-term care, life insurance, all that was important. But at the end of the day, I was just building relationships and making sure that when something unexpected happened, or expected, doesn't matter, the family that was left behind would be able to continue. So when I do all this IBC stuff, and I'm talking to all these people, and I get clients sometimes that will say things like, well, how do we put the lowest death benefit? Now, I know that these clients have young children and they have a wife or a husband. And I know they got a family, and I know they got debts, because all this stuff comes out in a fact finder in a strategy session. I mean, we're solving problems for people, so this is what it is. So when someone says to me, like, how do we put the lowest death benefit on it? I guess I'm not really phased, but I can't shake that Bob moment when I handed that check. And there's many more, and I've talked about some of the other ones, but I've rarely ever talked about Bob. It's hard for me to talk about it. But in this kind of a thing, it's really not terrible because it's a small audience and in the comfort of my house, and it's not for anything other than just real talk. And it really bothers me when I hear people say, I'm just going to buy term insurance because it's cheaper. And here's why it bothers me. Not because I know they're trying to save money and trying to go the cheap route, trying to do what Dave Ramsey told them to do. But it's really because I know that pretty much no matter what, I'm never going to deliver a death benefit to their family. Even if I write the term insurance, which I don't make a practice to do that anymore, but even if I did, I'm not going to be the one that delivers that death benefit. No one is. No one's going to deliver a death benefit to Betty because Bob would have long outlived term insurance. But you know what? The life insurance company already knows that. They know actuarial tables and they know statistics. And you can do your own research, folks, but less than 2%, let me repeat that, less than 2% of all term insurance sold ever pays a death benefit. So if you're going to protect your family, if you're going to make sure that your family is going to be okay when you're no longer here, when you graduate and go on to heaven, when you're going to do that with term insurance, I can look you right in the eye, staring right into this camera. I'm looking right into your eyes, and I can tell you, your family's never going to get this money. The insurance company is going to win here. The probability is against you. The odds are against you because less than 2% of these are going to pay out. Now, maybe you're one of the few. Maybe you get hit by a bus. Maybe lightning strikes you. Maybe I just have a heart attack and die. It happens. Less than 2% of the time. But I certainly know that if you love your family and you want to make sure your family and your kids are going to be okay when you're gone, if you try to do that with term insurance, and then you tell me the freaking lame excuse that you're going to invest the difference, and that's going to make up the money that your family would get in the permanent whole life insurance policy, why don't you look at the statistics? Why don't you look at how many people that are sold buy term invest the difference? How many of them actually end up self-insuring? They spend all that money. The market takes some of it from, taxes take some of it from, inflation whittles it down. There's no money left. There's no money left to make sure that that family continues the same lifestyle, to make sure that that family is okay. I'm not feeding you anything other than statistics and probabilities and actuarial tables, which is all boring stuff. But you see, if I did that for Bob, I never would have delivered a check to Betty. Betty still would have got those checks every single month because that was an annuity, but she never would have got that check. And all the other checks I delivered, those people wouldn't have gotten them either. Because I don't think, outside of maybe one time, maybe two, out of the thousands and thousands of clients I've had, I think I've ever delivered death claims for term insurance policies. The one time I did, sad story, had this woman, and she had beautiful young kids. She was Middle Eastern. She was always scared to meet with me. Never would have me over when her husband was there. Could never go to her house. She always met me in the office. It was odd. It was strange. Didn't understand it, but didn't really care. Set up a $100,000 term insurance policy because that's all she could afford. She wanted to protect her kids. She wasn't the breadwinner, so I didn't understand. I had met her husband because he had me meet at he had a TV station. But anyway, Long story short, there was a tragic thing that happened. She was murdered. I'm not going to say anymore. Not going to say anymore at all. She was murdered. You can look it up in the papers if you knew the statistics. That was one of the only term policies I ever delivered. All the rest of the death benefits, that I delivered during those 16 years as a financial advisor, all of them were permanent life insurance policy. Sold a lot of universal life back then. As a matter of fact, Bob's wasn't a whole life. It was a universal life with an NLG rider, a no lapse guarantee rider, because Bob wasn't playing that interest rate game. No. He wanted a no lapse guarantee, and he paid a little extra for that. But I delivered a lot of small death benefits, 10, 20 grand, burial policies, all whole life. But I'm being serious and I'm being real with you folks. Like, it's a lot of death benefits I've delivered. And you would think more of them would have been term insurance, right? Because I wasn't out there selling whole life. I sold whatever the client wanted. And a lot of people just wanted the cheap term insurance. And I gave them what they wanted back then, because that's all I was, a trained sales professional back then. But today, all we do is specially designed whole life. So to date, I think we have almost 10,000 clients in the US, give or take a few, okay? Because, policies lapse and things happen. But let's say it's 8 to 10,000. If all things stayed equal, no policies lapsed, I can guarantee every one of you watching this that in my life, I will deliver close to 8 to 10,000 death benefits, or my team will, because every one of those policies will be around for their whole life. I just wanted to share these stories with you tonight because I feel it's important. I feel sometimes we get lost in the shuffle of the fancy shiny objects, the cash on cash return. It's very important. Okay. All the things we do with IBC, it's all very important. None of it will matter when you're gone. There will be one thing that will matter. It will be the exact thing that mattered to Betty. That is what people will remember. Not the cars, not the debt you paid off, not the private loans. They'll remember that. So with that being said, folks, thank you so much for joining me for tonight. I would urge, and I'd love to invite all of you to join me, if you would, just in Dallas. So we've got an event going in Dallas. I'll put it up here real quick. Where is that sucker? So it's the 8th and 9th. Here we go. There it is. It's the 8th and 9th of May. It's the Private Money Club Money Tank event. So there are 3 days left to get the discount. See those discounts, Early Bird 1, Early Bird 2. Early Bird 1 gets you $300 off a general admission ticket, which means your general admission ticket goes from $697 down to $397. The VIP tickets, which gets you an extra day and a dinner with me and our entire team and all the speakers at medieval times, is going to be epic. That one's $1,297, but we give you $600 off, so it's $697. 3 days left. That's it. privatemoneyclub.com/money tank. And you're either going to join us May 8th and 9th, or you're going to join us May 7th, 8th, and 9th. I hope to see all of you there. I really do. We're going to have a lot of cool conversations, a lot of cool talks. Maybe we can even kind of reminisce about this talk tonight and about Bob and what this little story meant to you, or maybe it didn't mean anything to you. But that moment will always live down for me. And that's not the only time. I've shed a lot of tears with Betty. And, I know everybody's got a financial advisor that, comes over, has, milk and cookies and milk and, all, and shares tears, when hard times are. I know you all have that, right? Well, that's really special if you do. And I hope each and every one of you has someone like that in your life guiding you. And you know what? The funny thing is I was definitely at Bob's funeral. and I'll be at a lot of people's funerals. That's what happens when you build relationships. That's what happens when you actually make a difference in people's lives, when you actually care. Thanks for joining me, folks. See you tomorrow.